You're now in the Copper Queen mine. This mine is 700 feet deep. Believe it or not, you're on the 3rd level. There's 2 levels up above you, 4 levels below us. All the levels in this mine, as well as the rest of the mines in Bisbee, are 100 foot apart. Also in this mine, there's roughly 240 miles of railroad track in the city of Bisbee. If I start counting all of the mines, there is right at 5,000 miles of railroad track underneath you. Now, as you sit here in the dark, your eyes should be getting a little used to it. You look way up ahead. There's a light. Now, that's not the light at the end of the tunnel. That happens to be the original Copper Queen shaft. Now, we don't stop there. It's an incline shaft, and they're working on it anyway. But that's where they hoisted the ore out of the bottom of this mine up to this level to take it out. Now then, folks, I'm actually sitting in the narrowest part of this mine for one reason. Does everybody feel comfortable underground? Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to have problems start throwing rocks at me? No. You think you can find a rock in the mine? Yes. All right, we're going on, folks. I got to stop and open up an air door. Then we're going right to the stove. All right, folks, you're 700 feet from the foot of the mine. What I want you to do is I want you to step off those cars to your left. we're gonna go up 36 steps into the stove. So come along, go with me, and if you need the handrail, please use it. Come on up.
Is there an option here?
Now, this hole that you're standing in, it's not a cave. It's called a cut and fill stove. In a cut and fill stove, in the early days, as well as the last days of the mines in Bisbee, if they could remove large bodies of ore and leave this limestone wall supporting everything, they'd do it. Come back later and backfill it. Now, there was another stove that was used underground. A square set of timber just like that. Timber like that was used where the ground was heavy, gravelly, unstable. And all the timber that came underground for those square sets had to be Douglas fir or pine. Now that's not the best wood in the world, best tattletale. Because if miners are working somewhere and they need those square sets of timber and that ground starts to move, that timber right there, a mown-grown pop snap, and that miner had time to get out. Now, before we get started in the mining business, you heard me talk about Headless John? He's in here. He just can't get his face out of the rock. It's right there. He's going to be with me for a long time. Now, there's one other thing you need to understand. Back in 1915, none of the miners that were working in here had these little lights. Every man, when he came to work, was issued 3 candles a day. Now in this mine, what were they looking for? How about that blue-green rock right up there? That happens to be malachite nazarite. That's about 25 to 35% pure copper. Takes about 100 pounds of that to make 1 pound of copper. Now we all know malachite nazarite makes beautiful jewelry. Guess what? I don't even like that specimen at all. I like this little one right up here. So that's malachite nazarite in the center. This gray rock all the way around is called galena lead. Carries a little silver in it. But that orange looking rock, that's hematite. That's where the gold's at. There's a little bit of gold right there. Not enough to make a ring, but the hematite ore carried the gold. Now then, back in 1915, let's say that chef boss comes in and he says, men, we need to go this way. We want you to start drilling and blasting. Well, in 1915, folks, that's the drill. And the first jackhammer is a 4-pound hammer called a single jack. And the man would start out, he'd hit it, twist it, hit it, twist it, hit it, twist it. Why is he twisted? Well, number one, doesn't want to steal to get stuck. Number two, he's gotta make a round hole. Dynamite's round. After he's got that hole started, that means collared. Let's pick up the speed a little bit. They gave him a longer piece of steel, but they also gave him a bigger jackhammer, a 12-pound sledgehammer called a double jack. Now this becomes a two-man operation by candlelight. One man's going to turn that steel. The other man's going to stand back before you go and hit it. Oh, I wanted to demonstrate this a little bit, but you notice my partner didn't come up here? She's got a problem. It took all the cataracts out of my eyes last week. I'm going back to Tucson Wednesday to get glasses. I can't even see the end of that steel. But I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll have you turn that steel. Who are you? You with him? I'll give you the hammer. Look, he's hiding his hand. He's already got him in his pocket. Folks, don't you know that the man that had this piece of steel in his hand turned and told that gentleman to have this hammer? You might be swinging it today. Remember, it's my turn tomorrow. Don't miss. There was a lot of fingers and hands that got hit. Then in around 1920, this machine came underground. This machine started saving lives. Folks, miners fell down holes, got rocks on their heads, got kicked by the mules. What was the biggest killer underground in the early days? How about silicosis? Dust. That's what killed the miners. This machine came underground. It run with air, but it had water going through it all the way through the end of that steel, therefore washing up the drilled dust and extending the lifetime of a miner. Now then, in the last days of the mines in Bisbee, there was different jobs. On every level was a pipe and track man. His job, keep air and water lines to these machines, plus keep the rails in good shape. On every level was the timberman. Timberman's job, keep all the timber along the rails in good shape so those trains could keep it running. On every level was a motorman. All he did was drive a train, but he's got a partner called a swamper. Now that swamper's job is to load and unload the mine cars. You're going to hear about that job a little farther down the rail. Now then, bear in mind with me, in the last days of the mines in Bisbee, base pay for a miner was $45 a day. Also, in the last days of the mines in Bisbee, there was only 3 kinds of a miner. The first miner was the stope miner. 4 men to a stope, 2 working day shift, 2 working night shift, and they rotated every 2 weeks. But these men that were in these stopes, whether cut and fill or timber, were given a standard. The company wanted them to produce so much rock on a 2 weeks basis. At the end of 2 weeks, they tallied up their tonnage. Anything that went over that standard, they got paid a bonus of $10 a ton per man, plus his $45 a day in wages. Now your next miner in these mines is that little man up in the hole. He's called a raised miner. Now him and his partner only work day shift. Their job is to drive a hole from one level to the next level, normally up to an ore body or through an ore body. And as they go up, they have to put in air and water lines, put in landings, put in ventilation, put in chutes, put in the other side of that for the chute itself. And that piece of equipment he's got in his hand is called a stoper. It takes 4 pieces of steel to drill a 7-foot hole, but it does run with air and water. Now those men were given a contract. The company wanted them to advance up 6.5 feet a day. At the end of 2 weeks, they measured from A to B. Anything that went over that 6.5 feet average, they got paid $100 a foot bonus per man, plus their $45 a day in wages. Now you got the third miner in these mines. Me. I went to work for Phelps Dodge Corporation 2 days after I graduated from Bisbee High School. And against my mother's wishes, where do you think I went? I went underground. I quickly become a miner. I worked in the cut and fill stopes, in the timbered stopes. And somewheres along in my younger day, I got into a group of men called the roustabouts. This is 6 men. Our job was to go to anywhere and everywhere there was a wreck. By that I mean a cave-in. Our job was to go in, re-timber it back up so those miners could get back in. Now this job also had another little job. Every Saturday and Sunday, my job was to sit in a boatswain's chair tied to a 30-foot cable underneath those cages as they dropped me down through them shafts. My job, check shaft guides. Shaft guides are like what's in an elevator, keeps it guided, keeps them cages from banging back and forth against the wall. Well, after a while, I started getting buggery about this job for a couple of reasons. First off the bat, that seat belt on that boatswain's chair was a 1-inch leather strap. It had slots in it. You brought it across your waist and just hooked it over a button. The other thing that the shallowest mine they were dropping me down was 1,600 feet deep. The deepest one was 3,700 feet. I knew if I ever slipped or something happened, I'd be gone. I'd never be back. So I wound up getting in on what is called the cross-cut miners. Cross-cut miners built the railroads. Not like this mule trail I just brought you in on. The smallest ones that we were building were 10.5 feet across on the bottom, 6.5 feet over the top, 8 foot from that rail to that trolley line. Now there's 4 men to a crew, 2 working day shift, 2 night shift, and we rotated every 2 weeks. And while working over at the coal shaft, the company gave us a contract also. They wanted us 4 men between day shift and night shift of that day to advance ahead 7 feet. No way. Us 4 men did everything we could do to lay a section of rail every day. That's 15 feet. We got paid $100 a foot bonus per man over that 7 feet. And why we could blast when we wanted, that smoke went right up that shaft. Now then, there's one thing about it also. You have to understand another little thing. All the railroads that we were building underground had to be at a 2% grade going up. We had to let the water out. Between the Dallas, the Camel, the Coal, the Junction, and the Den Mine, they pumped right at 15,000 gallons of water a minute away from us. So we had to have that 2% grade so we could have a water ditch and send that water to the pumps. Now then, I just told you how much money I'd been making. Do you think I saved any of that money? Tell you what happened. I got married twice. That broke me. Now, there's one thing you also need to know. It always comes up and I get asked this, how many people died in the mine? During my time of 19.5 years underground, I brought out 3. One was a heart attack, well, the other 2 was, well, that was too many, but that was right at the beginning of MSHA, OSHA, and the Bureau of Mines. Now, are you folks ready to go farther into this mine?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to open up the gate, get on that train, and look at the next green light. Yeah, that's the quiz. It's coming. Don't forget that 2%.
give you my cell phone, right?
Look what it says. Oliver.
Let's go.
All right, folks, if you were hanging around those railroads that I was building and you had that red light up ahead of you, you'd be sitting here waiting for a train to go by. We had bypasses so that trains could pass one another, or we'd be waiting for a train to go across in front of us. Well, I know where the other train's at, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and turn it green. We're going to go on. You're 1,500 feet from the front of the mine. You've got over 1,800 feet of this gray rock up above you. It also goes to the core of this earth. Now I told you folks, there's about 5,000 miles of railroad track underneath you. Guess what? I know where all the holes are at. Yeah. So what I want you to do is step off those cars to your left again. Come and go with me. You know, and it's all walking. So I want you to use your light. on in, folks. Some of you can come down here and get in behind this car. Come right in that little area right there. Got plenty of room in here. And some of you can get in beside this car right here by that timber if you want. Now the reason I got these people against this wall is, if it should happen to fall, I'll be okay. Now I want you to look at something. 1, 2, 3, 4 chute doors. Behind them chute doors is a great big hole called a pocket. Goes from this level to the next 2 levels up. That's how they transferred that ore from up above to this level so they could take it out. Now then, back in 1915, they hired stout young men and they brought them down here. And they give them a job title called trammer. Now that young man would come down here, take a car like this, called an A car, hold 3/4 of a ton of rock, push it up under one of these chutes, get up on the little landing, open that door and fill it up. On this level of this mine, he then got behind this car and he pushed it to the front of the mine, dumped it, and came back all day long. Then somewhere in around 1917, they brought the mules underground. Now the mules did quite well, but you have to understand something about them mules. They were smarter than a bunch of miners. They actually formed the first union. They would pull 4 of these cars, no more. When they tried to give them that 5th car, and that mule heard that chain pop, he quit pulling. Take that 5th car off, the way that mule would go to the front of the mine, get his cars dumped, and then come back. Then somewhere in around 1925, that little motor that I pulled you in here with came underground. It's called a Manchi motor. Runs on batteries. Pulled about 25 of these cars and the mules were all taken out and put in a pasture. Now then, up in that stove, told you I wound up being a cross-cut man. You obviously figured out I was what they call a bonus hound. I wanted to make money. Well, there was times though that I'd step up to catch that train to go down, that cage to go down, and my good shift boss by the name of Bob Hart would say, Billy, you can't go to your crosscuts today. All of the pockets are full. There's no place to have your rock dumped. So what we're going to do is we're sending you 2 levels down below. We're splitting up a train. You're going to be a swamper. You're going to go with Charlie Ray. Your partner's going to go with Hernandez. You men are going to pull rock till you get the pockets pulled down. Didn't want to do it, but I didn't have a choice. Now I told you folks, those mines were wet. You had water running out of these chutes, going over, getting in a ditch, headed towards the pumps. Well, there's times you'd pull up on one of them trains, you'd get up on that platform, open that door up, and that wet muck would run out of that chute like a river. And maybe the next one that you came to and you'd open that door up and nothing had come out. Well, they had this idea, we're going to put across this car what is called a laggin. Now, a laggin is a 2x12, 5 foot long. Now, we're going to get up on this platform, stand on that laggin, prop that door open, and take a steel bar like this called a chute bar, and we're going to stand up there and we're going to reach up there and start bumping 800-900 tons of loose rock. Yeah, it's coming down. If it comes down too fast, too quick, and you can't get this bar out of that door in time, you have a spill. That means you're on your hands and knees down here digging rocks out from under these wheels. And what kind of shovel did they put around them chutes? How about a square point shovel with a 3-foot handle? I got tired of that. And I went and found an old swamper, been on them trains for years. I said, how do you do this day in and day out? Because every time I stick that steel bar up in that hole, rocks come down, they hit my hands are bruised, my knees hurt. He looked at me and he says, Benny, what's the matter with you? You're a miner. Why don't you let the Indian get it down? Well, I knew who the Indian was. The Indian happened to be dynamite from the Apache power plant out of Vinson, Arizona. Take a stick of dynamite, tape it to a stick, take a 12-foot fuse, cut off 6 feet of it, open that door and shove it back up in as close as you can get it into that rock. Oh, be sure you shut the door before you light it. But once you got it lit, you tell that motorman, you go down there and guard. I'm gonna go down here and guard because I didn't want anyone to walk by that chute till that shot goes off. Once that shot goes off, I come back after the smoke is cleared, and I'm through visiting with whoever I can find in the mine. Now, if that door's full of rock, it's called rock in the box. If there's not much in it, it's called a hatful. And if all I got out of that little blast was a hatful, that meant I had to walk all the way back to the powder magazine to get another stick of dynamite, because if they'd caught me walking around the mine with an extra stick of dynamite in my hip pocket, they'd give me 3 days off. Well, Bob Hart came up and had been blasting on one of those chutes, and he says, "What's the matter, Benny?" I said, "Bob, it's like glue up there, it just won't fold together and come out." Bob said, "Let me look." At this time, Bob did the one thing you're not supposed to do. He got up on that platform, he got across that leg, and he propped that door open. Now, Bob decided he wants to crawl up and look up in there and see where that loose rock's at. So as Bob's starting to go up there, he takes his helmet off. And just as he's starting to go up into that hole, there's a rock about like that comes down. Didn't hit him on the head, should have. Got him on the arm. Bob come out of that hole. His eyes were about that big around, and he looked at me and he said, "Benny, just go get all the Indians you want." From that day on, when I had to work on one of them trains, you think I touched that steel bar? Nope. If it didn't come down, I blasted it. Now, there's another little thing you need to know about the mines in Bisbee. That shift boss has to come and see each and every miner twice a shift. Now, some of those shift bosses walk as high as 5 miles before lunch, 5 miles after lunch. And they went to the company and said, "Look, we're walking too much. We've got to have transportation on every level." And the company said, "Sure, we'll give it to you." And they did. They built them bicycles that run on rails. I can tell you when this bicycle was built. 1961 was when the banana seat came out. And the company told them, "Now you have to understand one thing. We didn't buy these bicycles, and they'll run as fast backwards as they will forward because we built them and we couldn't figure out how to put the coaster brake on." Now, did we mess with the shift boss? Sure we did. You know what happens if you leave the right kind of a rock or a piece of wooden wedge on that rail? Well, if you happen to look at this bent-up handlebar post, why don't you tell me what his vocabulary was after he smacked it into the wall? And they told us, "You miners will not ride that bike." That's like telling kids you can't touch toys in Walmart. Did I take that bike? Yes, I did. Did I ever bring it back? Never. And if that shift boss walks up and says, "I can't find my bike, I left it right here," you tell him, "Well, maybe you better look down there, maybe you better look over there." He said, "How could it get over there?" You think we copped out? Nope. We told him Headless John took that bike. Headless John got blamed for everything. Come on, folks, we got some more to go. Come right on in there. Line up against the wall over there. There's a bench if you need to sit on it. I'm going to talk about 3 machines. Come right on in. Just sort of back up against that wall. Come right on in here. We've got plenty of room. You can get, some of you can get right in that little area there. Some of you can build it up right there. Okay, folks, you know what you just did? No, you don't, so I'm going to have to tell you. You just walked through a fire door. If you look, stands right there into the cement, right behind that gentleman is 1917. Did they have fires underground? Yes, they did. Remember, they had candles. Miners that get careless, kick a candle over, or maybe he's taking a nap and it burns down into some sawdust. Well, if they get a fire going, they just come in, shut them steel doors, bring in a fire crew, and get it snuffed out. Now, then this system right here, this is called a single setup. 2 men that put this post up where they want it, get it secured to the ground, put this bar where they need it, then pick this machine up and set it up here. Now this machine weighs right at 280 pounds. The good thing about this machine is it runs with air. It has water going through it. It also swivels. I can drill a hole there, a hole there, and a hole there, loosen those nuts up, spin it around, drill 3 more holes. The only bad thing about this machine is it uses a steel bit. Now it's a Timken bit. Timken bits are still made in Los Angeles and Denver, Colorado, and this unscrews. And folks, if I was going to try to drill 25 to 26 holes into that wall behind me, I better bring about 40 of these bits, because that rock right behind me will hammer this bit down like a mushroom. Folks, that's hard rock. Now then, this little machine right here came underground before me. It left before me, and I'm so glad I never got to run it. This machine was relieved from its duty by the one you saw on the stove. This machine runs on air only. There is no water going through it, and it'll run. And if I start drilling a hole into that wall behind me, I can guarantee you in about 15 to 20 minutes, I'm going to fill this room with a white dust powder. One of us could start having a sinus problem. One of us could also get started in something like emphysema. Well, the miners had a name for this old machine. They called it the Widowmaker. You run this machine very long, you could be gone. Now this next machine right here, let me get right in there. This is called a, well, we call it a Cadillac. Actually, it's a Gardner Denver jackleg. Weighs about 165 pounds. Now, if I need to move this machine around, I stick the arm underneath it, grab this handle, and walk off. Now, the good thing about this machine is it runs with air. It has water going through it. It's got a leg that does all of the pushing. If I'm drilling that hole right there, I'll throw that throttle forward, adjust the air pressure in that leg, and stand just like this and drill what is called a 7-foot hole. Now this machine is very fast and it's very loud. I still say huh a lot, especially around the house. But it uses a square piece of steel, but it also has a tungsten carbide bit on it. I can drill about 40 to 50 bit holes before I knock this bit off and put another one on. Now how fast is this machine? Well, I can take this machine and this piece of steel and drive it all the way into that wall in about 5 to 7 minutes. Now, it's a machine. All machines have problems. Yes, it runs with air, it's got water in it, it's got a leg doing the push. Let's say I'm me and my partner drilling somewhere, and up walks a new man, and he'll say, hey, I want to learn to be a miner. I want you to teach me how to drill. Show me where to put the holes. You know what we'd tell him? Have at it. Well, he'd jump on this machine and throw that throttle forward. Folks, the minute that man put his leg over that leg right there, you grabbed a hold of him and pulled him away from it. This leg will extend 8 feet. It's also got over 150 pounds of air pressure in it. If it breaks loose from the ground, instantaneously it pops up this high first before it takes off. You see that handle right there? That handle right there will make a bad man sing soprano in the church choir. You're going to be calling him Squeaky for about 2 weeks. Come on, I'm going to show you how we blasted it. Now then, if you look at this wall, it's got these fuses in it. That's called a face. Everything in front of a miner is the face, the back is the back, the bottom is the floor, but the sides are called the ribs. Now if I was to blast this and get what I wanted, I could take that square set of timber right there, twist it and go right into that wall. Now that's the back holes, the breast holes, 2 relievers, the skimmers, and the lifters. This right here, folks, is not a funny face. It's called a 5-hole burn, and it's drilled in this hard rock for a reason. When this center hole goes off, it breaks to these 4 dummy holes. Now, the idea of breaking this rock, you're trying to move ahead 7 feet. You've got to create a cavity right here first. Then 1 hole at a time. Enlarge that cavity, because if you shot them all at one time, you wouldn't get a foot of that rock. It'll blow out of them holes like a shotgun blast. Now then, In the early days, I'd take a stick of dynamite, a cap and a fuse, and using a stick like this called a loading stick, put one in each hole. Then I'd come back to this one. I'd take 14 sticks of dynamite, just split them with a pocket knife. As I put them in, mash them. I can mash new dynamite, it's fairly safe. And then I'd probably put 12 in all the rest of them. Eventually we quit using so much dynamite. Dynamite's gassy. Well, the nitroglycerin is what's gassy. What we started doing is we'd put one stick of dynamite with a cap and a fuse in each hole. Then from a big paper sack with an air gun, I filled those holes up with a compound called carbamide. Carbamite's a mixture of coal dust, diesel fuel, and ammonium nitrate. Same thing that blew up Texas, the FBI building, stuff you want to put around your roses, commercial fertilizer. It'll explode. All right, let's say we got it all loaded up, and it's about 30 minutes before quitting time. I'm going to step to the face with a little board like this called a spitter board. I'm going to take this first fuse right here. I'm going to cut off about 18 inches of it and put it on this board. Then, taking that piece that I cut off, I'm going to pick up this fuse and I'm going to measure it out to be about a ½ inch longer. Throw that one down, pick up this fuse. I'm going to measure this one from that last piece about a ½ inch longer. Every fuse that I start cutting is going to be approximately a ½ inch longer than the last one. That's how I set this up so that when I light this round, I'm going to start right there. Create that cavity and keep enlarging it one hole at a time. Also, with this ½ inch distance between each fuse, I'm going to be able to count this round as it goes off. When this round goes off, I want to hear it go. Boom, 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 boom. Not this one boom. One boom I messed up. Now it happens to be, about 15 minutes before quitting time. My partner and I both have a little rod like this called a spitter. It has a magnesium solution molded onto it, burns at 1200 degrees. Why do we have this? Well, folks, we talked about all that moisture in them mines. Well, these old dynamite fuses, black powder, they absorb that moisture, and you'd have a wet bubble on the end of each one of these. I could stand here with an old Zippo cigarette lighter and never get them all lit. This, burning at 1200 degrees. I'll start out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, till I light 25 to 26 holes. As soon as I'm through lighting them, I'm going to take what's left of this and throw it down right there. Folks, this thing only burns for 40 seconds. Am I starting to tell you something? Definitely. And these old dynamite fuses burn 1 foot for 40 seconds. I've cut off 18 inches of this one. By the time I've lit that hole down there, this one's in the hole. It's time for me to take a walk. Now, you never ran into mine because you didn't want to take a chance of stumbling and falling in front of your blast. We'd have time to go to the train and go down the driftways. As they went off, we counted them. If I had the right count, that's fine. If I didn't have that right count, I would tell my shift boss when I got on top, please have that opposite crew look for a mist hole. And it did happen from time to time. Why? I didn't want them to come down here, take a pick, take a steel bar, poking around in a bunch of rock and hit a stick of dynamite with a cap in it. Let's say that hole didn't go off for some reason. Well, they'd find it. Well, they'd just shove a water hose in it, melt out that ammonium nitrate, go back to the powder magazine, get a stick of dynamite, a cap and a fuse, come on back, stick it in that hole, light it, walk around the corner, blast it, and then they'd come on back and go to work. Let's take a walk into this big old room right over here. You got a lot of room. Come on in here. Now then, folks, you're at the southwest mine. Actually, you were standing right close to the shaft, and that's the shaft right there. This shaft happens to be 700 feet deep also. Also, that is a standard cage. That cage will hold 12 men. It'll also carry bundles of lumber, pallets of dynamite, your lunch if you forget it. Now then, this cage right here is run with electric motor up above. And it's not very fast. It just travels up and down. It does have a cager with it. Now then, if you happen to be working over at the camel shaft, and it's on a Monday after a big holiday, and that cager brings that cage up and that whistle blows and he opens them gates, you want to be the first man to get on that cage, and you want to back up to that wall and let the other 11 men back up to you. Why? Because when he pulls the trigger on it, she feels like she's free falling the first 300 feet. Why do you want to be standing in the back after a holiday? Well, if somebody's got a hangover, something's going to come up. You definitely want to be in the back. Now then, this little car right here is called a K car. We use these cars at the Dallas mine. The Dallas mine was called a nasty mine. It was a wet mine. It was a caving mine. We could drive one of those crosscuts straight today. In about 2 to 3 weeks, that ground would start moving around and it'd twist and turn, so we wouldn't have to move that timber so often. We use that side of a car. This big old car right here is called an E-car. It holds 3 tons of rock. Now, when you came into our facility, I'm quite certain you saw that trolley motor outside. That trolley motor could pull on the main haulage runs about 30 of these cars loaded at about 40 miles an hour. Now, when you saw him a-coming, you found you a hole and just got up in it and let it go. Folks, he does not have brakes. The only way he controls that motor and gets it to stop or slow down is reverse the polarity on that electric engine. Now, this little car right here is called an H car. It holds 1 ton of rock. Now, these are the kind of cars we used in the crosscuts. Now, I told you those crosscuts were 10.5 feet across on the bottom. We had what we called a super switch. It was actually 2 sets of rails welded to a steel plate, and we drug it right with us. I could bring in 6 of these cars on one side, send 6 loaded cars out on the other side. Now, this piece of equipment right here is called a Finley. It's nothing but a glorified front-end loader that runs on rails, and it's all powered by air. When you screw this handle down, that bucket right there come right up over the top of you and throw that rock right into that car. Take about a minute to fill this car up. Also, that was my machine off the 700 level of the coal shaft. Now, you've been following me around in this mine. You know it's a copper mine, right? Well, has anybody got any idea what kind of rock that is? Well, I'm going to have to tell you. It's called leverite. Leverite there has no copper value whatsoever. Now, we're going to pretend that you people are all miners. You're on the 2800 level of the camel shaft. That's the last place that I worked. Now, if you're working day shift, well, you have a good breakfast and you bring a good lunch. If you're working night shift, well, you have a good dinner, but you bring a good lunch. Now, you're 2,800 feet down. You got a stomach problem. Where are you going? How about right here? Right there. Oh. Now, this is called a sanitation car. Do you think we called it a sanitation car? Nope, started with an S. Now then, at the Dallas mine, we hung all the toilet paper up here on a wire. Why? Because we had rats and we had cockroaches, big ones. Now, we fed them. We didn't try to pet them, but we kept them for one reason. If you're working somewhere and all of a sudden the rats and the cockroaches take off, you better go back here and look at your mountain somewhere she's a caving in. They could sense the movement of the earth before we could. Now I'm going to bring something up to you right now. You got over 1,800 foot of rock up above you. Which one of you is going to tell me what's going on in this world? You can't. Which one of you is going to tell me north from south? You can't. I can't. So would you believe me if I told you miners had a lot of stress underground? There was a lot of stress underground. So miners had to play. This is the toy that they played with. Let's say we've got a new miner that needs to utilize this facility. It's going to be you. Come here. we're gonna pretend you need to use this, okay?
Sure.
And you don't have that light and you don't have that light, so I'm gonna walk around here, take your helmet and your light and put it over there. I want you to get up there and sit down on the far.
Okay, I did need to go, so.
All right, now then, one thing you need to know, there is no magazine rack, all right?
Oh, man.
Now then, would you like privacy though?
No. You're not gonna get it.
Well, not right this bunch, but you would. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you good privacy as I walk away from you. Folks, let's go back to the stove. What was the grade of this track?
2.
2%. I kicked that wedge out from under that wheel. You're moving all right. I don't care. Once this thing goes rolling off into the dark, it's so dark you can put your hand on your nose and you can't see it. You'll start screaming, squalling, throwing a fit. Probably choice words too.
Oh, yeah.
And somebody's going to tell you, well, just reach back and grab the brake. We'll grab a hold of that brake. Good. Now I want you to know something. These cars have no brakes. That's about the dumpster. Now then, when this car gets stopped, I'll show up with a 5-gallon bucket, a shovel, a sack of white lime, and a water hose. You know what your job is?
Clean.
Yes, ma'am, all 300 feet. Now then, you know what they call this? Initiation. You've just been initiated underground. Now I'm going to ask you one more question. When you came here to go into this mine, what's the name of this mine? The copper what?
Queen.
You are the queen. You're the one who's sitting on the throne. Are you through now?
Yeah.
All right,
I think I am.
let's
Wait
give
a
her a
minute.
big
Wait,
hand,
wait,
folks.
wait.
Now, we're going to be walking out to the train, but I want you to do me a favor, because I got to talk to you there one more time. But I want you to leave your lights on till you see daylight. That means when we get outside. When you walk into that building, walk on the outside of that counter this time. Please leave your lights at the end of the counter where you got them. Batteries on the outside, and take your hats and your vest all the way to the other end, and don't worry about them. We'll put them up, and if you left a cap, please pick it up. Now then, we're going to walk out to the train. Now, my partner's not broke, but she just looks that way. She's got a can. I have to get your tag. It's called brass in, brass out. When you went to work for the company, when you walked up to that timekeeper's office and you signed your time card, that timekeeper gave you a piece of brass that had your payroll number on it. When you came out from underground, you gave it back to him and he hung it up on a board. That way, any foreman, any boss could walk in, look at that board and determine who was still underground and who wasn't. Now, that payroll number that the company issued to us is a number you never, ever forget. My payroll number out of 4,100 miners 40 years ago was 1763. You never forget your payroll number. So let's walk towards that train. I got to talk to you some more.
The light of my life now.
Yes.